All right, we're good.
All right, call the meeting to order. Rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thanks everybody for coming on in. We are going to jump, we don't have any staff members here or anybody who's looking specifically for policy. So, Lori, we're going to jump to, we're going to start with your policies, which are number
342.1.
342.1.
Is that you, Lori?
That's what I have.
Okay, yep, sounds good. All right.
So how does this work? I mean, do I just
Well, is there anything that I guess just kind of describe the
describe, okay.
the quick policy?
It's my first
and-
time doing this.
Yes, if they have
Okay.
anything.
So 342.1 is the programs for students with disabilities, and we, this policy, I believe, is almost the same as the sample policy from WASB. I think the only change that we made to it was on page 2, related to who can serve as the LEA. Correct. On here it had said that, we took out the line that said, the second sentence in that second paragraph, such designee shall be an administrator and shall receive periodic training that is specific to serving in that role. And we took that out because sometimes we do have, like, in cases of like speech and language, the speech and language person may serve as the LEA on an IEP. So we took out, so it didn't have to be an administrator, but it could be an administrator or a designee. I think that's all we took out on this, out of the sample one. Otherwise, the rest of this was pretty much the same as the sample policy. It refers a lot to that, refers to using the DPI model policy and procedure manual, which districts are required to either adopt that, or you can put other things together, but then they have to be approved by the DPI. So we're just adopting the model policy and procedure manual. That's
That's good, yep, that's
Perfect.
pretty much it.
The next, can I just go on?
Yep, keep going, yep.
So the next 342.11, which is that independent educational evaluations. And this is a policy related to how we would handle if somebody did request an independent educational evaluation, which parents or families have the right to do if they disagree with the results of an evaluation done by the district. And so we have not had a specific policy about this before, but this sort of talks about like how that process would work, and what is allowed, what criteria would be applied to determining who would do the evaluation and things. So that's a new policy, like I said, because we haven't had one previous. Are there any questions? Am I moving on? Okay, so there's also a rule that goes with that. So there's like the policy and then there's the rule. So the rule is separate here. And this, the policy and the rule, these were taken from sample policies that we had gotten. I think these were from Whitefish Bay policies that I think we,
The rule
is
from
from Whitefish
The
Bay.
rules from Whitefish.
And the other one is from, maybe one of the samples.
I think Lori, on the rule, we went there because that was recently done, and Lori, you wanted more guidance over what credentials, so they couldn't just go to any, it needed to be a credential for certain appropriate licensure and things that we were comfortable with to accept. And then we had some payment things on there, gave some rough things, so it was a little bit more specific, and Lori asked me for something a little bit more specific.
She really helped me find something.
Perfect.
She's very kind.
She's a great resource. So, and that
I
was
think they both
recently
might be
done.
from Whitefish Bay though, I'm not sure. I have to go back and look here. Do we get both of those from
I didn't
some
print
samples?
out
But
the
in any
ones
case,
I
we got They were, yeah.
Both of them are from Whitefish Bay.
I think, are they? Okay,
It would be noted at the bottom.
It's noted, yeah.
okay, yeah, that's, okay. Any questions about those? Let me see the other ones I have here. Oh, the programs for disabilities was updated and renumbered.
Yeah, so we'll be deleting
Yeah.
6,000.1.
Yeah, those other ones are old ones, because we're not a part of the Arrowhead Special Ed Cooperative any longer, so that was a bit dated. So then,
And 6,000.1.
We went into 504s.
okay, the 504 one. And this was the one that came from, yeah, this was a WASB.
WASB, straight up WASB.
Much from there, yep.
Which one is that?
342.8. Any questions about that one? No? Okay, we're moving on.
Straightforward.
Okay, do I have anything left?
I think that's good for you, Lori.
Except you had that one other one that used assistive technology.
Assisted technology, which is 363.3, which is a renumber from 4,021.1.
Which one? 360.
3.3, which is assistive technology. So that's sort of a,
This policy really sort of kind of says that students with disabilities who have a need for assistive technology will be provided that for their IEP, so.
Yeah, that's an IEP team decision.
It's sort of
That
like
gets it,
a-
and just basically highlights that stuff that it's just, that we work with the IEP team, make sure that things are appropriate and follow all the district guidelines.
I think that's all I had.
Thank you, Lori.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Okay.
Have a good day.
all right, you're up.
Want me to take the records rules? Sure. Okay, all right. So 347, the rule, and then 347.1, all pretty much go together. Again, this is all pertaining to student records, student data, student confidentiality. So in taking a look at these policies, again, we went right to our policy resource guide from WASB. Per their recommendation, these have been recently updated, and there has been no recent updates since the end of middle of the 2021 school year. So again, it just highlights what our responsibility is as it relates to student records and the directory data. So yeah, pretty straightforward boilerplate stuff, just a lot of legalese. Alrighty. Again, complete boilerplate stuff, as recommended. Okay.
Okay.
Alright. Field trips.
So field trips is a current renumber of policy 4016 will now become policy 352. Basically this is a mixture of a Neola policy from Swallow, which was a little bit more specific than the general one from WASB, with the removal of overnight field trips. And things that had to do with deletion of high school related trips with a lot of co-curriculars, because that doesn't happen in K districts, so there were some modifications from the Neola policy.
We don't need to go
Yeah.
into it
Yeah, it's my understanding from talking to Dr. Russ that we haven't.
And what was the overnight part?
So, marine biology, the old marine biology?
yet. Well, we do have, the overnight trip, we do have a band trip, that's sometimes overnight.
One fifth grade used to do.
Fifth grade, yep, with some of that stuff too. So, do these policies cover any overnight?
I know I kinda stopped with COVID, but I would hate to write it off
Sponsored trips.
completely.
It doesn't
Doesn't
say
disclose
that
it,
you
no.
can't,
Okay,
it just isn't an upright own little category.
okay.
Right, it'll,
As
these
long
will
as we're
still,
not saying no, not ever.
no,
Okay,
No, and actually it just refers to extended field trips.
yep.
Beyond the borders of Wisconsin or state contiguous to Wisconsin or extends beyond 24 hours. All extended must have prior approval from the board. So the difference would be in an extended field trip, you would approve. Why day field trips, principals approve, you know, if kids are going to the zoo or something like that. But if something's 24 hours or longer or out of the state in this policy, it comes to you. But it doesn't have its own little huge section. Because in most cases, that happens when you're traveling to Europe, right, or some of those.
So basically, it's covered,
okay.
it's covered,
It's there.
it's logistical.
Perfect.
Yes.
But that will be new for you, maybe, I don't know, I don't
Is that even
remember.
No,
necessary?
it's never, it's, for overnights, it's usually, we've never asked the board before.
Yeah, and
Do you wanna change that?
not
We can
just
change
being
that.
administration or.
Yeah, I would say as long as it's continuous with the state of Wisconsin, it's reasonable.
So out of state, out of the
Yeah,
country.
I don't know why the board would have to
Yeah.
approve.
I wouldn't say out of state.
Out of state, out of country, the board would have to approve.
If you wanna do out of state, then that would be like the band trip, so.
That, right now it says written, which is letter
If
B,
it's overnight though.
which is all extended field trips is one that extends beyond the borders of Wisconsin
Okay,
Yep.
or states contiguous to Wisconsin or extends beyond 24 hours, gets approved by the board.
And that's common, I've seen it in other boards.
Yeah, it's-
And that's just common practice everywhere.
I don't know, I don't think the board needs to get involved in field trips, but.
You wanna move it forward as is, or if just, you wanna change something to, if it's in the state of Wisconsin, then it doesn't have to go to the board, so basically anything outside of the state that would be overnight would have to be approved by the board.
Yeah, are you good with that?
I'm good with that,
Yeah.
that's fine. Okay,
Say
well,
that again.
so basically it'd be anything out of state and overnight. We'll doctor something up. Okay.
Alright.
Well, that is really B.
I think what Nicole's talking about is when fifth grade, we used to have a fifth grade overnight field trip.
It was
That
like
happened.
2.5 days or.
Yeah, it was
whatever.
2.5 days, that was overnight, that was in Camp Whitcomb,
Yeah.
or in one of the camps nearby.
So I feel like B says that, and, that anything outside of Wisconsin, and other states, we'd get approval, and I hear we wanna keep that. It seems to me what you want revised is A, that a same-day field trip or extended field
Yeah.
trip
There we go.
in the borders of
Or just
Wisconsin.
remove or extends beyond a 24-hour period. In
No, I
B.
think for A. I think B, I think we're,
She's looking at me now.
Well, B, we wanna keep the same, right, because we want field trips beyond Wisconsin and over 24 hours to go to the board.
Well, A is talking about same-day field trips.
Right, so I'm saying what you're really asking of me for your fifth grade example would be, a same-day or extended field trip that takes within the borders of Wisconsin, right?
So the last sentence is add that.
yeah, all same day, or these.
Or
these field
extended,
trip, or
same day or
must have
extended that are
priors.
happening in
Yes.
Wisconsin is what you want me to revise that.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yep,
Right, in A, and
In
leave
A,
B
yeah,
as
yeah,
is,
fine.
because we feel that way.
yep.
Sorry,
And
I'm,
B,
No,
the
you're good.
example for B would be the band trip. They're
Out of state.
out of state, they sometimes went down to Northwestern to participate in a jazz festival or something like that too, or a Blue Man Group, so.
I'm gonna guess our insurance company would probably want that approved by the board anyway.
Okay.
All right, so I'll do the revision on that. And then we have a whole bunch of deletions that were in our policy 16, which were forms for field trip that are no longer what we use. The bus thing comes directly from Dousman, we use their forms. We do have forms, but these are just up to date, so.
Okay.
Basically, it allows us the forms to be updated as needed without board approval.
One exhibit, any questions on those? Volunteers in schools are a number of policy 8010. I believe this is just a mix of policies between Viola and Elmbrook.
Yep.
Some of those are directly required, as we know. There's a state law with the required of sex offenders registry to come in, so that basically is dealing if we have contractors or people, and that gets run through our Raptor. And it would pull and give us information if that would be what it is. Allows board members to serve as coach or supervisors explicitly, which, you know, can happen from time to time. And basically gives the district administrator or his designee or her designee a responsibility for overseeing that.
Okay.
Any questions on that?
So we're not listing the volunteers' responsibilities or what they're prohibited from anymore in the policy? Is that all covered under just the state statute?
What the volunteer has, it's like, this, it's listed under like, on that first page, that bottom where it's starting with letters, is to inform each volunteer that the volunteer, those are A through, yeah.
Respect confidential nature,
Mhm.
including academic behavior, and not share any information to any third-party evaluation of district policies.
Were you looking for something else?
No, I'm just comparing, seeing.
Oh.
It's just not spelling it out.
Right, okay. Looks good.
Okay. This next section, 361.1 and 361.1 rule are actually just renumbers from our policy work that we did last summer.
Okay.
So there's no changes that we have outside of just renumbering them, because they were adopted on July 18th, 2022.
So probably no real need to rehash that.
Administration isn't recommending any
Okay.
changes.
Good. Good.
361.2, library material selection, was a current policy that the board had. Although we talk about it in our instructional materials policy a little bit as well, but it's a renumber and update to 4004.1 and policy 3017.1. And just kind of refers to what to do with someone, how we select library materials, and if people want to challenge anything. I believe that's pretty sample-ish. Any questions on that?
Have you ever had, or when's the last time you guys ever used challenge?
Not underneath mine.
Yeah.
I mean, a formal challenge, nothing that we haven't been able to handle.
Yeah,
with
exactly.
the-
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, next policy policy is 363.1. I worked a lot with Jim on these tech policies because I did them right before I left my former place of employment.
Okay.
Because I was responsible for the technology department. I'll just leave it at that. I learned a little bit more than I ever wanted to about hardware and software. So really, policy 363.1 web contact is directly relating kind of to district logo, branding, name sites, and social media. So this just guides that someone can't basically throw our logo on something outside of something that we oversee and house on servers. And really that's important because we want to make sure that our brand is that and no one's just taking our logo and putting it on top because it's really easy to do online, frankly. And it also just lets everyone know, partly because even anything we link to from our website is supposed to follow ADA requirements for access to everything. So that's like even our PTO websites, any other websites that we link to are supposed to be accessible for that. So a lot of districts kind of like tone back a little bit for what we actually link to.
Sure.
On websites, the less linking, the kind of better to like generic, some school districts, used to link to, when they get a flyer for whatever and link to that, but they get more and more careful because it's supposed to be ADA accessible. Why CMS for Schools, who houses our web information, we have like a little place on there that actually lets you hit an ADA. So when I do a website, you hit ADA accessibility and it will give you some things that you may have to do to fix that.
Okay.
So that makes, text to speech, whatever, even graphically for people that have visual impairments. So this policy is just about branding and also just letting other people know that like you still have to follow any, the links on our website. That's probably like the important part of page 1 that people don't know, but we have to link to people, if we put Dreambox, for example, there, which is a math program, we're saying that it's COPA and the children's privacy thing. It meets our requirements for that, the legal requirements for that. So it does put a lot of onus, so, Jim spends a lot of time reviewing and making sure that these things are in place. But it also makes sure that, things that we're linking to are accessible. So this is a brand new policy, one that both, we think is really necessary because if we catch something out there, we would just be able to say like, no can do, we can't link it, or you can't use it.
And we have been doing that, this just formalizes that process. I know, for instance, there's been some, if a teacher will say, hey, can I have this website open, or if I want to use this, or bring this kind of program in, one of the things that's the first check is that COPA check. So making sure it follows all of our expectations of student privacy and things like that.
Now, this would affect teachers if they're linking and making their own website, and that might be something we have to talk about because, right now some of our teachers use a Google, have their own Google webpage, not Classroom. Google Classroom is a little separate, but they can do a Google site page, and then we're responsible for linking to that to making sure it's requirement. And that works a little bit different than, like I said, CMS for Schools. I don't feel like it's been a huge problem here, but it does kind of really protect your branding and making sure that we're doing.
And if a teacher did their own website, is that linked through our website? Okay.
Yeah, so they even go to that staff page, for instance, to say, who's Ron Russ, and like, okay, if I made my own site, instead of utilizing CMS for Schools, because like if you go to me, mine is all linked through CMS for Schools. Somebody may have their own Google site, whether it be for a specific grade level or a classroom. I think of 4K, for instance, they have their own Google site that sometimes they manage too as well. So
the biggest website that we have for that is our Gifted and Talented programming that Mary does. But I mean, really probably over time, we might wanna put everyone in the same place. It's just easier, but it's not the hugest priority, probably, as long as we're making sure that it's appropriate.
Okay.
and teachers are responsible for that content.
Okay.
Yeah.
really, for whatever reason, Oshkosh in the state of Wisconsin is really well known for their technology policies, which is a chunk of what we also have done in May. I think because they're very on top of that, so. All right, any other questions on web content? All right, then we have responsible, acceptable, and safe use of technology, which is really a renumbering of two policies that we're putting into one, which is policy 7050 and 7050.2. It's a very meaty policy, and it's a very meaty rule. They were written to kind of go along with the ed tech policy that was previously approved last in July also, last summer. And again, Jim and I, we worked on some of that, brought some of the Oshkosh information back in, but just really this is all about following law, I have to tell you. And I would tell you, we're getting a little bit of, I don't wanna say pushback, but there's been some websites that Jim has said no to. Just
From a teacher side or a student side?
from a
both?
teacher side.
Okay.
Can't use, there's a lot, like age 13 is the big age for a lot of these laws. So in most cases in a K-8 district, anything that requires any parental consent from 13 and, you know, from under 13, then we're just thinking it's not, in most cases, it's not needed, it's not an appropriate thing.
Or there's a good alternative.
Yeah.
Bless you.
Something.
Bless you.
Or there's a reason why it's 13 and up.
Sure.
You know, nothing's ever free. Even when they make something free for schools, it usually comes with advertising things. You know, we found out during COVID, like even some of those free sites, like what's being advertised on the corner
Right.
on those free things are stuff that, you know, would come up, that we would not want our kids to necessarily see.
Sure.
It takes a lot of control out of, you know,
Sure.
what comes, because they bait and click just like anything else on the free software, so. So Jim and I have a very good partnership. If a teacher wants something new, to take a look over something, I think, like, do we have something instructionally already that we purchased? Because we are looking, we have a lot of, when I wanna say repetitive programs, like for reading, we have like 3 like programs that do something similar
Sure.
that we're all paying for. So we're also trying to slim some of that down, you know, but every teacher has their favorite thing. So
Sure.
it's hard because we want our teachers to have what they want at the same time. Do we really need reading A to Z, Raz Kids, and Newsella? You know, all very similar type of products, do similar kind of things, all have a price tag. But again, then for this policy, we make sure that it's compliant and it's how it is. Now, this is gonna refer to a lot of things that are gonna be coming in the 500s. I'm gonna say that relating to staff use. So these policies are written to some coming policies that we're gonna have in the 500s for staff access to our network devices and how they manage. Because really, if staff is doing work on any device, it's available for open records, and we have a big amount of professional development to do here for staff. Anytime they're working on work-related things, you know. We're not a high school, that's a bigger mess for that, which is good, because they have coaches there that they're monitoring,
Yeah.
because we're supposed to hold the record for those.
Sure.
But that's gonna be a big shift here, because I'm gonna be honest, a whole bunch of our parents sometimes have access to our teachers' cell phone numbers, texting. We're gonna wanna limit all of that, coming up in the 500 series.
Oh, boy.
Because it's really not, because we should be holding records. And
During school hours.
And again, it's to protect everybody.
correct,
I mean, we're not going after anybody, we're trying to
no,
protect everybody.
yeah,
It's good intentions.
it is, but it's gonna, I'm just warning you how all of these are playing, because that's gonna be a big shift for our staff and community. I mean, let me tell you, it was a very big shift where I came from too, but it was basically like, we really, this is for your sake as the teacher,
Yeah.
you don't want, you know, this to come in any, like you're trying to contact a student or go through someone else, and parents are included in that, so.
Okay.
Not that
We
we've
just want
had,
to use email, basically things that we can track.
So basically, so it's just kind of, communication is gonna be email.
Well, that way a record is
Exists.
kept, that way a record is kept.
yes,
Yeah. And the other piece is we're also trying to make sure that there's that balance. I mean, it depends, some people give out their cell phone numbers to parents, some people do not. Again, we would like people to disengage when they leave, because again, I know the parent communication is very heavy on our staff. And, yeah, very, very heavy on staff.
but as you know, when I do this, I'm very upfront about where I think our hiccups will come in this
Oh,
work.
It's good.
So,
You think it's gonna come more from parents, or it's gonna come more from staff, or?
Both.
probably will.
Yeah.
I don't wanna jump ahead.
And then the corresponding rule just gives a little bit more specifics to what the policy is, a little more guidance, for that, so, and then these will be policies, that I know that are in our summer registration, correct, Ron?
Correct.
So these would be updated and they will go new, and I think, when parents do summer registration, we probably wanna put some notice to them that these are new and updated, and they should make sure to give them
I think transparency and just being
Review.
upfront about it.
Yeah,
Is key.
Yeah.
Possible.
From a
Yeah.
student standpoint, it does not really mean anything, it's just what they're gonna be signing off for will be, look different.
Right.
As well too, so yeah, we'll highlight that through, all the way from your student data to, all of that will be part of the registration process.
I mean, but basically this is saying like, realize you have no confidentiality, right? Students, anything you have, we pull, we have filters, we have things that have keywords that, you know, we look for and make sure that you're being safe and.
Right. My, I just wanna ask, so we have 347 rule, and then we have 363.2 R, and I'm assuming R is the rule.
Yes.
So maybe 347 should be 347 R,
347.
just so
Yeah.
that it's,
Yep.
Consistent, yeah,
Yeah.
I can change that.
Is that the one you did?
That's the one I just did.
Okay.
not trying to be a pain, just easier to point out now.
Okay, then Lori did 363.3 when she was here.
Yep.
So 364 is a little bit of something Lori and I did together.
Okay.
I should have caught that. So this is just talking about our counseling program. This is a standard WASB policy.
Okay.
The only thing in here that's like pretty much a requirement would be the ACP portion of that.
Three 365.
No questions on 364. Okay. 365 is a new one. It's kind of just talking about our multi-level system of support, which actually, this policy kind of came from a change maybe 10 years ago already that required for students to be identified of having a disability, specifically a learning disability. There's a requirement that the school district does 2 intensive interventions at 80% fidelity first before a student can be identified of having a special education need. So this policy really directs your administrative team to have a process with the 2 interventions. I've been working on this part very hard since I've been here.
Sure.
We used a chunk of our ESSER funds that on the required 20% in the instructional side for additional resources in this area in math, reading, and writing, and significant resources in training. The resources in training will probably never go away. That So, you know, that our staff, our interventionists, and our instructional specialists have the training to deliver the interventions. Because 80% fidelity is basically what is the research behind the program. And each program has, like, if it needs to be a licensed teacher, for example. So I use level literacy intervention. Fidelities for that is that it has to be a licensed reading teacher. So an instructional aide could not deliver the intervention.
Okay.
So for that to occur, then we train them in that intervention. But we have some interventions like Sound Partners that an instructional aide with training can deliver. So those are all the things districts have to be aware of for each intervention, and then make sure that it stays at 80%. So that's, you know, most intervention will tell you, does it need to be one-on-one, does it need to be small group? What's the size of the small group do they allow? Is it supposed to be 5 days a week? Or is it designed to be delivered 2 days a week, 3 days a week? So we actually have intervention sheets for all of those that determine that, so we know that when we're at 80%. So what that does for Lori is when students go through some interventions, and their needs, you know, they're maybe growing, but not at the rate we would expect. Or there's also in the law that, you know, if it's too much for regular ed, so if a kid has been in intervention for a couple years and they're growing, but just not at the rate that would be anticipated from the research, and sometimes that's also how a student qualifies. So this policy is really just directing us to have that and to have those pieces into place.
Okay.
So,
And you both are recommending it?
yeah,
Okay.
For sure.
yeah. I mean, you need to do it, so you might as well have a policy for it.
Sure. Outlining expectations.
This
Okay.
is, it helps too with conversations with families.
Sure.
Yeah.
Got it.
So our staff's been working really hard on that, proud of their work.
I think you guys have all worked really hard, so thank you.
Because that really targets that growth of all students too. as well.
Okay.
So lots of things going on.
And then Ron, I think you did these
Yep.
last couple
Yep, I
ones,
did
so
the
I'll let
last
you
couple.
talk about it.
Sure, yeah, so extracurricular, Troy, do you have a question? No, oh, okay, all right. 370, extracurricular activities and programs. Basically, this is a combination of 4,015 and 722 for 7022. Again, this is a WASB sample policy. We don't have a lot of extracurricular activities and programs, and basically, you'll see a little bit later, 7,022 highlights athletics. I just combined athletics and activities together. Our athletic programs are our AMSAC, which is boys and girls basketball and boys and girls volleyball. That's it. And again, and as well as the co-curriculars, whether it be the play and jazz band and some of those other things. But it basically highlights that school expectations are still there when you are participating in a school-sponsored activity. From that standpoint too as well. It also requires us for all of our athletic programs and making sure, which we do, the concussion as well as the cardiac arrest as well too. So the cardiac arrest we will be adding next spring because it was something that we haven't done before in the past. WIAA does require it. We are not WIAA, but we are going to be including that in our registration for our AMSAC events too as well. So again, that's kind of the only new thing in that would be is we are going to be adding the cardiac arrest recognition and acknowledgement from that standpoint too. So with that, again, obviously we would delete 4,015 and 7022 as well. Okay, student fundraising activities. Again, just kind of again, this is a new. We never really had one. We don't do a lot of student fundraising. I think the only student fundraising we might have done was for the play. You know, the musical might have done, you know, went out and sold Kriegels, or I think Jazz Band did, or whatever. This pretty much just highlights how the activities or the advisors would go about doing that if in fact it was outside of school or inside of school as well. So basically parent acknowledgement. And the big piece there is if kids are going door to door, they underneath the age of 9 and or 12, they have to have parent acknowledgement. And if they're under 9, they have to have a parent. Now, it's not something that we would ever recommend, going back to that, but again, it's just for school fundraising.
And this is separate from Girl Scouts?
Yep, those are completely.
Food drive,
Food
clothing
drive,
drive?
PTO, again, those are non-school sanctioned, but just partnership. That's
Okay.
it. Yep. And then we talked about 70-22, and then use of service animals, again, we just updated that about a year ago. Again, we are just renumbering that to fit to the appropriate place.
Nice.
That's it. Okay, that would conclude. So the next steps for this is this would be forwarded for first review a week from today,
Okay.
on April 24th for the board. And away we go.
So my note says the only revision that we have is 352 field trips.
Do you agree with that? I mean, just
Yeah,
because I
I'm fine with
suggested
it.
it
I'm good
doesn't
with it.
mean,
I'm good with that. It's,
I just don't see why the board.
as long as the
can't.
board is, I'm fine with it. Our past practice has been just to let us handle that internally.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Was there anything else, Troy? Like you caught?
This
Yeah.
one, these today, no.
And then Ron fixed the R on the.
Yeah,
other
I fixed the
policy.
R already, and I will notify the rest of the board, and our staff too, that has changed, and get them new paper copies from that standpoint. Okay. All right.
You added 347.
347.1, the rule,
Yeah, that's an added, so
and that's in the matrix too as well.
I saw you.
Yeah, mine, I saw you in there this morning. All right.
Well,
Then
thank
my
you guys.
conversation with you about parent opt-in.
Right, so ultimately, that would, we would have to handle that back at the board level. And Troy had a small conversation with me about the, I don't know which policy it was, Maria, where it was basically allowing parents to opt out of
Six, 7, 8.
6th, 7th, and 8th grade, but it was part of the global policy around what parents have the right to opt out of. Which is human growth and development, as well as the forward at grades 4, 8, and 10.
Are you talking about the parental there?
Parental.
Parental, right?
Correct, yeah, yep.
Okay, what,
Troy, did you want to kind of highlight that?
I thought we had that correct in the policy.
What are
We did,
we-
Troy is recommending, or what's
Follow
that?
along with our human growth, parents opt in instead of opting out. So-
Oh, you want to change it from an opt?
Yeah,
Okay, so to do that, I would have to pull the full committee together.
the full,
No, the SEL, he's talking about SEL. There was an SEL part about where parents opt into.
opt-out.
So that, those, because Jen caught those in the policy, it is written kind of weird, but it's accurate. Because human growth and development, we have an opt-in.
And that's what we want a suggestion to do with 8, 6, 7, 8.
And cell right now is an
Opt-out.
opt-out.
Opt out. No, Troy wanted to have a discussion.
Do you want it to cell to opt-in?
Opt-in. 6,
Okay, I thought you meant for human growth and
No.
development to be an opt-out.
No,
We
no,
would
we-
have
we
to
already
get
did
that
that.
full committee together
No,
to
we're not doing
retouch
that.
any of that, those changes, so. And I have not had any issues with human growth and development since I've been here. I like to
No,
say,
no, I
like,
do.
just
I think
leave
leave
it,
it, yeah.
leave it go. If
Right.
everyone's
Because I know
good,
at the meeting,
Right.
when we voted for the human growth and development opt-in, at that meeting, we were going to opt out, and he made the motion to change the opt-in at that meeting, and we approved it at that meeting. So that's why I'd rather,
And then it would all just be
That-
consistent?
I'd rather it be on the written prior to the meeting. It's just, basically, it's just an update here. at
because
the
you have
meeting.
you have the last read on
You have the
this.
last
We have the
read,
last read,
you have
so-
one more last read of it, so
So
that's
you
where.
can make the
You
change.
can make the
change
change.
now, and then we bring it to last read, it can be still voted on during the last read.
Right,
So
You,
that's
you
when
can,
the last second change at the meeting.
I think because you approved it to roll over on the reading, someone would have to bring a motion, right, to
you can
change it?
change the policy on Monday. you can change the working of the policy on Monday. It still is another draft.
Yes.
So you can do
You're
that.
saying have it like on the agenda to change or call it
No.
out?
I'm gonna let the board make that, I'm personally not gonna make, the board made a motion in August, and we created a policy to follow that. That's what the policy reads.
For the human growth and development.
No, for
you're talking
SEL.
about the
I'm talking about SEL,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
Troy, I would say if you wanted to bring that up at the meeting formally, when we go to,
When we hit that number.
when we hit that number, just to say, hey, I'd like to make a motion.
We need to go this way.
Exactly.
Just like we did with human growth and
Correct.
development. When President Goldman made the thing from opt.
Yep, exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
I just wanna make sure.
You certainly can.
Yep,
Yeah.
all right.
Procedurally wise, you can
Yeah, I
change
saw
that.
that.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, that's fine.
Exactly. The
Consistency.
board may say, hey, kick it back to the committee, but yeah, for consistency's sake, it's completely up to the board where they would like to go with that. Okay. All right.
And that's it.
Thank you, guys.
All right, you want to adjourn us?
Yep, we're adjourned at, what, 8:22 p.m.
And
AM.
All right.
it'd be nice